Welcome to this week's Therapeutic Tuesday. And this week we have another one of our filmed mini sessions. And this week I'm working with Sarah. And we're exploring the question of why it feels like she's not improving despite doing a number of the right things. And we get into things like understanding the physical causes of what may be happening, why pacing and calming the system are so important, and also some pieces around building trust with and kind of working on her relationship with her body. So I think it's a good session pulling together a number of different themes into one place, and I hope you're going to find it helpful. Here is Sarah. So what I've got from the email is that you've kind of had a few episodes over the years, and this has been a kind of, I think, the third episode that you've had of kind of chronic fatigue. And you've done quite a lot of different stuff over time, and you've done different programs at different points, some with us and some with the kind of other places. And it sounds like that the anxiety and stress piece has often been a key piece of the jigsaw for you. Yeah. But it sounds like you're not quite sure where you are at this point in terms of what you should or shouldn't be doing and perhaps why things feel a bit stuck. So do you want to give me a bit more of a sense of just kind of what things look like at the moment, like in terms of what you can do, what you can't do, what the main symptoms are, and let's start from there.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, everything else you said, yeah, it's exactly sort of what's been going on. Since I arranged the appointment through Jenny, I was sort of thinking, well, where am I currently? What, just sort of have an observation. So I was thinking that I've kind of pushed a bit over Christmas, as everyone does, and sort of thought, right, after Christmas, I really need to just take some time and ease back a bit and have a bit more rest, really, so that I feel I can kind of recover from that a little bit, because I did feel I was not pushing too much, but certainly pushing more than I should have. So then sort of since early January, I've kind of just been, I can pop out, sometimes I can nip out and do a bit of a shop, or I can do a little bit of housework, as long as I don't leave for too long, that kind of thing. But the fatigue is kind of there all the time. It'll come and go. So often it's worse in the morning. And so I tend to do what I need to do in the morning, and then I might rest for a bit, and then it tends to pick up late afternoon into the evening. But that doesn't always happen. And then I think what I put in my email, which confuses me, is that the other week I had to go out with my son. He was going back to uni, so I had to go and get some stuff for him. And I really had to push myself, and I felt dreadful around the supermarket. Got back, and I was thinking the whole time I was around there, oh God, how am I going to get round and get home and stuff? Got home and felt fine. And I just thought, but I've pushed myself, shouldn't I feel worse or whatever? I don't know. So I think it's, I'm managing to function, but at quite a reduced level than say I could over Christmas and New Year. I've then been able to sort of rest, relax, I feel as much, try and get good sleep, try and eat better, try and do all the right things, if you like. Now, usually that would be that after about maybe a week to 10 days of that in the past, my energy starts to come back in, but it isn't. And then, of course, I worry about that, stress about that, and all the other stuff comes in. So I know that doesn't help. Is that kind of...
Yeah, that's helpful. That's helpful. Do you feel like if we take the last 3, 6, 12 months or so, what's been the trajectory? Do you feel like you've been getting gradually improving, gradually getting worse, that you've been kind of stuck at the same level? What's the overall trajectory?
So it started March, April last year, and it kind of was getting worse then. Stopped working, so sort of rested in kind of May, June time, not working at all. And then July and August, I couldn't exercise, but I felt I had no symptoms. I had managed to go away on holiday and things like that. Then went back to work, some went to uni. And then it gradually just was getting worse again. not worse than, say, how it was in June time. So I wouldn't say I went down to a lower level, but I couldn't work, had to give up work again. Then it's kind of stayed at for a while, it stayed at a kind of a same level of bad enough that I'd have to go and lie down sometimes, but not that I'm bedbound or, and then now this past month, I would say it's probably like it was in May, probably like it was in October when I had to stop working again. So I wouldn't say I'm going down and down and down, but I'm not picking up as quickly as I had last year, I would say.
And do you feel like the high points, that may be the wrong word to use, but the kind of the better periods, let's say,
yes.
Do you feel like they're hitting, if we were charting this, they're hitting the same peak, or it's not as high a peak, or it's a slightly higher peak? So if we take kind of May, was it kind of August sort of time?
July and August, I felt very good.
So if we take July and August and we take kind of where are those peaks versus, are they getting higher or getting less?
No, I would say July and August was the best I've felt since I started with it. And I wouldn't say I felt that good since then. So when my energy does come in, I'll have a few days of feeling okay, probably maybe a couple of weeks, but I wouldn't say the energy is as sustained. When I think what I was doing in July and August, it's not as sustained as then.
And when energy does come in, what does that look like? So how do you increase activity, and how do you know how much to do, and how does that work?
Well, when it comes back in, it's like I don't feel it. I don't feel like I could do loads, but I feel I might say normal. So I wouldn't feel like I could run up the stairs or something, but I can go up the stairs and feel okay. Whereas, normally I wouldn't. Sorry, what was the other question?
No, so what I'm trying to get a sense of is, do you feel like you're increasing activity in a careful, in touch with your body way, or do you feel like you go carefully, then you get the energy's there, then you go too fast, or what? How do you feel like you're navigating that part of the picture?
When the energy comes back in, I realize, not at the moment, but certainly before, like November, December time, when energy came back in, I know that then I would be doing too much. I know I'd be pushing too hard. So, like, for example, when I returned to work in September, I went straight back into doing 1 to 2 days a week instead of going in for an hour and then 2 hours and 3 hours. So I think when my energy has come back in, I want to feel normal. And it's so easy to sort of think, well, okay, I can just do this, and I could just go and do this and whatever. I feel okay, and then feeling okay after doing that, and maybe feeling okay for a few days, but then realising actually maybe I have pushed myself too hard. So since sort of January, if I get some energy coming back in, I'll do something, but I'll do it to say 60 or 80%. And then I think I'm going to stop now, because if I keep going, although I feel I can keep going, I'm pushing. And I think this is where the confusion is coming, is that I feel I'm pushing the boundaries better, as I think you call it.
Yeah, bouncing the boundaries.
But my energy is not lifting, and that's worrying me. And of course, the worry doesn't help. But that's what's happening, I think, is that I feel I'm probably pacing better than I have done in the past, but I'm not seeing the results for that, or not yet.
And you would say you've been pacing better for the last sort of few weeks or so?
Yeah, probably since probably since the start of the year, which I know is very long.
So about 3 weeks.
Yeah, yeah, they are quite impatient.
I'm not laughing.
I know it's not very long, but I think it's because in the past my energy has come up more quickly.
No, I get that.
Then I'm thinking, well, why isn't it? I feel I'm doing what I should, etc. Yeah,
no, I hear that. And I laughing may not seem like a suitable response. I apologize for that, but I think part of it is it's such a kind of typical achiever kind of response of like, well, I'm doing the right things. Why is it not working now? So let's just put it in some wider context, because I understand why you're feeling a sense of anxiety at this point, because it's like, well, I'm now doing what I should be doing. Why am I not seeing the progress from?
Yeah.
So I think the answer to that is that your body needs more time. But let's just take a step back, because what's interesting is So the crash was back in April last year.
Yeah, really, I really thought, oh, this is what chronic fatigue again.
Yeah. And we're talking in context, 3 crashes over a kind of 24-year period, right?
Yeah, the first one was extremely mild, but the second one was like this one a bit. Really.
Yeah. So, well, firstly, what I want to say is it sounds like it's interesting that after that crash in April that you really listened, you really rested, and that worked. So we know that your body responds really well to physical rest, but we also know that it's quite sensitive to stress and kind of what's happening in your nervous system as well. Yeah. So the conditions that your body needs to recover are physical rest and pacing your activity in line with what you're able to do, and your nervous system to be in a calm, relaxed, healing state. When those conditions have been met, it sounds like over time you've then started to see progress. What you've then now identified is that there's perhaps a slight sort of denial pattern that comes in, where as soon as you feel better, you want to sort of pretend that it hasn't been happening, go, right, I'm okay now, I can start kind of doing things.
Yeah.
And that isn't an uncommon thing. And I think particularly when you've had a kind of a lot of years of good health, and it's like something's come back in which has been obviously traumatic in the past, and it's like you sort of want to convince yourself you're better as soon as you possibly can so you can stop worrying about it and stressing about it. The problem is that, as I think you've identified, when you approach it in that way, what ends up happening is that you're just a little bit ahead of where you actually are physically, which means that what was causing the progress before was you were building more energy than you were spending. So it's almost like, you had £100 a day of money that was coming in and you were consistently spending 80. Yeah. And then your income has gone up a little bit. Maybe it's gone from 100 to 120, but you're now trying to spend 125 sort of thing. That's the shift, which I think is problematic. And I think everything else staying equal, if you were just to take more time and keep calming your system and pace more carefully, I'm pretty confident you're going to see over the next month or two that things start to pick up and improve again. But I also want to take a kind of a wider step back, which is it's interesting that there's been these kind of 3 episodes over this period of time. And I'm curious to why that is the case, because I think there's probably some underlying anxiety that's there of, well, why does this keep happening and sort of what's going on? And I know that from the kind of brief case history you sent me, there was a lot of life stress, psycho-emotional stress that was kind of loading on your boat. So I think it's not in some way surprising from that point of view. But I also find myself curious as to what is the physical vulnerability, in a sense, that when that boat loads up and there's too much stuff happening, that something sort of snaps in your kind of energy system. And I'm just wondering how much investigation you've done on the kind of physical side and nutritional side in terms of understanding what those actual mechanisms are for you.
Well, I did last year. I saw a functional medical person, naturopath, and we did. She did quite a lot of tests, so we did the adrenal. Is it the one for cortisol?
Yeah, adrenal
stress index.
So you did saliva samples 4 times.
Yeah, my cortisol was high throughout the day.
Okay.
That was sort of last summer. So I expected it to be low, and it wasn't. It wasn't massively high in the morning or massively high in the evening, but throughout the day it came down in the normal thing, but it was high anyway. It was in the red, really. I did the oats test. I did, which is all it's the organic acid test one. I did a DNA one, and I did a stool sample one. I can't remember what that was called. And a few things came from it, but nothing majorly that would say, oh, right, this is, do you know what I mean? There was nothing, she said there was nothing there that kind of, there's a few things she said, well, you need to improve this or improve that, but nothing major that would have said, oh, this is a big fact, other than the cortisol being high. And so she gave me some things for that. I've put it personally, when I look back, I've put it down to the fact that I've probably dealt with anxiety, health anxiety, most of my life, probably since I was about 10.
Yeah.
So I feel that when I had it in my 20s, it was fairly mild. Then when I had it in my early 40s, that was after my mum died. When it came back last year, it was after my dad died. So I could be wrong. My view on it is that because dealing with an anxiety condition kind of already depletes my energy, really, because I'm already on that, fight and flight a lot of the time, that when there's additional stresses, like that happened, the previous 2 years, it's like, well, I just don't have that resilience. I don't have those resources, and it tips me over into the nervous exhaustion, whatever. That's how I've viewed it. I'm not saying it is that, but that's always been my kind.
Well, I think that's valid, and I think it's good that you have that level of insight into what's happening, because everyone's picture is different in terms of what those kind of ingredients are. But I still think for that level of stress that's been going on, for one person it might be that they deal with that by drinking alcohol. Someone else might deal with it, their back kind of goes out and they have to deal with that. Somebody else, the way that it comes out is they get panic attacks. So different people have different vulnerabilities and different kind of things, weaknesses, let's say, in their system. And I still think it's helpful to know what those mechanisms are, because then you can look at boosting and supporting those things. So, for example, if someone knows that under significant emotional stress, they tend to drink too much, then knowing that they're stressed and either going into some form of therapy or going to AA or whatever it might be is a way of kind of protecting a certain amount against that. Someone has back issues. No, hang on, I'm stressed. I should be having regular appointments with my osteopath because I need to make sure that I'm strengthening or do some physio work to kind of strengthen those areas. So as much as and we'll talk more in a minute about the psycho-emotional side, because I think that's obviously a piece that I can hopefully give some diagnosis with. But I would still be interested to get more clarity on what's actually happening. And it may be that still the mechanism of how things improve is working with the psycho-emotional side, and it may be things that can be done to be strengthened on the physical side. So yeah, that's just a kind of question mark, really, just about possibly getting some more data there.
What tests would you suggest for that then, really, if you're looking at more?
I wouldn't be nearly as old enough to make any recommendations, or I'd be told off by the nutrition team who get irritated by Alex's poorly informed recommendations when he should be recommending professionals. One thing you might want to do, without wanting to turn this into a kind of promotional thing, is you could have a free 15-minute chat with one of the nutrition team here and at least just sound out how we may be able to help on that.
Yeah, because I've got all my test results still, so I could always send those through and have a look, perhaps. Yeah,
so we have a good process of assessing if we think we can be helpful with people before they have to kind of spend money, sort of thing. Coming back to the psycho-emotional side, do you feel like you're in a healing state most of the time at the moment? Like, where do you feel your nervous system is? Obviously, being on a recorded mini session like this is
it's really
a perfect opportunity. But what's your kind of day-to-day kind of general sense of how you are?
At the moment, I would say it's probably anything between 2 to about 5.
On a kind of stress scale, yeah.
I would say my stress stuff at the moment really is this. Like, a lot of my stuff, my previous stresses are sort of settled, really. So I kind of feel, not my only stress, I mean, it's how you look at things.
But your primary stresses, yeah.
Yeah, my big thing is having this. This is the only thing that's stressing me out at the moment, because I can't work, I can't earn, I'm self-employed, so I don't get sick pay. So there's a pressure there that I need to get back to work. I must be well so I can get back to work so I can earn money, etc. And just the frustration, I think, really, of like anyone who has this condition of I got well before from it. I keep going over and over in my head, what did I do last time to get well? Do you know what I mean? And that, because it is the same, and I think it's the same sort of cause probably, and it's that. So really, those are the things that I'm trying to accept and not, because I know it's not helpful. So I think those are the main stresses.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think perhaps part of what's probably happening as well is that you sort of answer that, you play some tennis, you sort of answer that question. You go, right, okay, what I need to do is I just need to be in a healing state. So you probably then work really hard at getting on a healing state for a few days. And then the background is like, am I feeling better? Is it working?
Yeah.
Have I got more energy? I haven't got more energy. And then it's kind of like, okay, well, it's not okay, but maybe I just pace better. So then you kind of do a few days or a week or so of pacing better. And then it's like, is my energy coming back? Why is my energy not coming back? It's not coming back. It's not working. It must, and then it's, well, it must be something else. What? So I think that there's a sort of, you're calming probably to a point, but there's a kind of underlying sense of pressure around.
Yeah.
And I understand that financial drive of, but if I'm not working, I'm not earning, and it makes sense. And of course, that's a kind of extra load on the boat in a sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
But all the data that we're talking about, what that tells me is that when you get your activity level right and you rest and you get your nervous system basically calm, you start to see progress. And it makes sense that that progress has been a little bit slower this time, because I think you've probably compounded a few crashes on top of each other in terms of trying to do too much. And then you had Christmas, and it sounds like that was an extra kind of burden as well.
Yeah.
So you're not just recovering from any one incident, you're sort of recovering from a combination of incidents. And you have a body which is sort of probably a little bit fed up with being pushed too quickly. And so is also putting the brakes on a certain amount and go, actually, I need enough rest for my capacity to start to come back. So I think this is partly an exercise in trust, in a sense. And it's really looking at what is your sense of trust in your body, as opposed to something that you have to push to get better, that you have to convince to get better. Yeah, like when you think about how you feel towards your body, what comes to mind?
Well, this is because I see like a psychotherapist as well for the anxiety. And what I've said to him is I don't trust my body, because I don't feel safe in my body. That's the anxiety thing, really, is that because I've had so many horrible anxiety symptoms over the years, I don't feel safe in it. So I know that's why when I watched your first sort of 3 videos, it really resonated with me, because I just thought, well, that, I don't have that feeling of safety in my body, and I'm working on that. Obviously,
yes.
That is something I'm working on. But I think it's one thing to be dealing with the chronic fatigue, but I do feel there's a bit, and I know they're obviously connected, but there's that double whammy of I'm also trying to deal with anxiety, and the symptoms of chronic fatigue, because I have health anxiety, they contribute to that. So it's a bit of a double whammy. I know one's fed the other.
Right. So the more symptoms you get, the more anxiety you get. The more symptoms you get, the more anxiety.
Yeah, it's trying to accept, allow them to be there, to and having that trust. And I do think that's you've hit the nail on the head really there with that kind of trusting my body that it, my therapist says to me, he says, you've just got to get out your own way. Your body knows how to heal. It knows how to heal. It knows how to do it, but you're getting in the way constantly with it. And so, that's a work in progress. But
So here's what I would say about it. I think it's important to remember that trust is something that we build in a relationship.
Yeah.
And the more that you try to push your body before it's ready to do things, you're actually eroding that trust in the relationship. As much as you might go into a mindset and go, well, it's just the fact that I'm worrying about things, I'm in anxiety. If I can just calm down and get things done, it's easy to get into a sort of achiever pattern with that. And I've just got to persuade my body that it can do it. The problem with that approach is actually it's kind of re-traumatizing your body, or it's not just you trusting your body, it's also your body learning to trust you. And so the way to kind of approach it is to think, how can I build trust with my body? How do I need to listen to it? How do I need to engage with it in a way which is building trust, as opposed to a way which is eroding trust or sort of fighting against that? And it takes time, and it's a process. And it sounds like you are making progress with this, and I think your level of awareness about where you are and what you need and what's going on is pretty spot on, which I think is a sign, again, there is some trust and awareness that's there, and it's a little embryonic at the moment. It's a little bit delicate. And if you get a bit too carried away a bit too quickly, it's easy for that then to fall away from it.
Yeah.
So I think this is going to be a slightly, this might feel slightly anticlimactic for you in terms of my recommendations, but I think you are doing the right things. I think right now it is about as much physical rest as you need. And that I do feel confident, and I don't normally make these sorts of statements. When I do, I sometimes regret it, but I do sort of feel confident that you just need a little bit more time. And I just track that based upon when you've had those conditions in place over the last kind of 9 months, that's worked. It's just you've tried to move too quickly.
Yeah.
It's then working, as you already, it sounds like you are, on that relationship of trust with your body, of calming your mind and settling your system. But then I think the real challenge for you comes in, a few weeks, a month or two, whatever, which is that as the energy starts to come back again, how do you navigate that stage differently to how you have done previously? Which is that I think there's a sort of denial that comes in, I'm feeling better now, now I can do things. And I think it is very tempting when you're self-employed and you've got those pressures from kind of financial side, to sort of think, well, if the faster I start working again, the more I can alleviate that anxiety, the better I will feel. But I think it's often the opposite, that the slower you go back, the more stable it is, that path going back, that actually things that you kind of build that trust and things become calmer in the process. And in a sense, you weren't to know back in the kind of summertime that you were starting to feel better. You weren't to know that you were sort of going too quickly. So I also wouldn't berate yourself for that. You've just kind of had to gather the evidence of that and the evidence of what's happened over Christmas to go, okay, I now recognize I do need a slower pace of returning.
When I had it in the 2006 and I went back to work, I was employed then, so I had sick pay and blah, blah, blah. But I was able to go back really slowly then. I traveled like half an hour into Birmingham, and it would be, I'd go in half an hour, have a cup of tea and come home again, and then build out. And I did a very gradual phase return. That worked. My employers are fantastic and that worked. And I think because this time I was self-employed, it's in that support system in a way. Do you know what I mean? I thought, I'm only doing 1 day a week. It didn't seem like a lot, but I think that combined with my son going to uni and the whole empty nest thing, at the same time, that was like a bit too much all at once. And I think a combination of doing a phase return and I kept saying to myself when I was going back to work, it's not work, work's fine, it's not stressful, it's not work that's bringing the symptoms back.
You keep telling yourself that.
Yeah, I did. Okay, I kept saying to myself, it's not work, I'm fine, like self-hypnosis or something. But it's easy in hindsight, isn't it, to look back and say, I can see where I went wrong there. I can see, and it's a learning thing. And I suppose there's that impatience because I thought, I've cracked this. I felt so good in July and August.
Sure. And you weren't to know. You know now through the information you have that you realised that you were going too quickly.
I think it's like you say, it's patient. I know I'm not being patient about it because who wants to be patient with this condition? Sure. We all want it gone, the next day kind of thing. And I think it's accepting that and like you said, I think resting more. I think the other thing I get a bit when I rest a lot, sometimes I feel worse for that because it's a bit like I feel like it's that illness mindset that, I'm not, I can't do things. And I think it's learning to be okay with that a little bit because it's not hard.
It's really seeing rest as a gift to your body rather than rest as a thing that's being forced upon you.
Yeah, like a punishment for doing too much or something. I think that's quite important. I also think, going back to this, I also think there might be an issue with the stuff that happened with my dad in the previous 2-3 years. There's some stuff there that I think I've probably not dealt with. So there might be some stuff there I need to look at.
Yeah, I think the more emotional stuff the more emotional loads and stuff that's kind of there, that's all weighing on your system. And the way that often goes is the more emotion that's in the body that's not being kind of resolved, the more we go into the mind and we speed up the system to escape that. And so the more that you can process and digest that, the easier it then becomes to be more calm, more present, more in the moment. So I think you're doing the right things. Okay. If anything, the kind of takeaway here is keep doing what you're doing. And be, patience is a muscle that gets worked out, and we get better at it the more we practice it. And I think you will start to see the energy returning. You just need to build that trust, which you already are aware that's what you need to be doing. And as the energy comes back, that's your real challenge. It's what to do with that energy at that point.
Yeah, I think so. And also for me, because this is my third round, is to really make sure that beyond that, I'm putting in place a lifestyle that I never want to get this again, you know. So for me, it's okay, because I've been well for 10, 11 years. I just thought, oh, I'm done with that. That's finished, you know. And it's your body has other ideas, doesn't it? So for me, it's that.
I always say about relapse, if we recreate a similar set of circumstances and we cope with it in the same strategies as before, we will recreate the same outcome.
Yeah.
You can have the same circumstances and have a different set of tools and strategies, and then you're not going to have the same outcome. But it's important to definitely learn the lessons from that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any final questions you've got for now?
I don't think so. Can I just have a very quick look? Because I did make some notes myself. No, I think that's fine, actually. I think that's it. We've kind of covered everything I've made notes on. I think it's, like you say, it's just continue what I'm doing, keep trying to just have that patience and building that trust and feeling safety in my body, because I know when I do that, I do feel better, even if it doesn't last all day. But I do, like if I do a meditation and it's a really good one about feeling safe in my body and all the rest of it, then yeah, I'll feel good for a bit. But you know,
and that's really important information to know, that when you do that, your body gives you a thumbs up and says, yes, can I have some more of this?
Yeah, it is listening, being guided by your body more. It's hard to do that when you've been in your head such a lot. So that's something I will work on, definitely. Thank you.
Right, good. And send me an email in a month or so and let me know how you're doing.
Okay, I will do. Thanks very much.
Thanks, you're really welcome. Thanks for your time.
Thanks. Yeah. Bye.
I hope you found that helpful. Do check out the rest of the Therapeutic Tuesday episodes on YouTube. There must be over a dozen or so of those sessions that you can watch now. And tomorrow it's Wellness Wednesday, and we have the second in our 3-part series with Julia Alderman, one of the nutrition team here at the Optimum Health Clinic. And we're talking about the idea of, are supplements safe and do supplements work? And we have some specific ways of understanding and working with supplements, specifically with people suffering from ME, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, and those fatigue-related conditions, which I think can be a little different to how others may have experienced working with supplements. So please do look out for that tomorrow, and I look forward to talking with you then.